The 48 laws of power. Imagine yourself standing in the marble corridors of an ancient palace, where whispered conversations carry the weight of kingdoms, and a single misstep can determine the fate of empires. The air is thick with unspoken alliances, hidden agendas, and carefully orchestrated performances. Each courtier moves with deliberate grace, their smiles masking calculations, their gestures concealing intentions. In this theater of influence, you begin to notice something profound. Power is not simply about strength or authority, but about understanding the invisible currents that flow between human hearts and minds. What if the very same dynamics that shaped the rise and fall of ancient dynasties are still at work today, quietly shaping every interaction you have, every relationship you navigate, every goal you pursue? Robert Greene's 48 Laws emerge from this timeless theater, distilling centuries of human ambition, manipulation, and strategy into a manual for navigating power. These laws are not mere historical curiosities, but living principles that pulse through modern boardrooms, political campaigns, and even intimate relationships. They reveal an uncomfortable truth: that influence and control operate according to patterns as predictable as the tides, and that understanding these patterns can mean the difference between mastery and victimhood. In our contemporary world, where traditional hierarchies blur and new forms of power emerge through technology and social influence, these ancient insights take on fresh urgency. How do we maintain our integrity while recognizing the games being played around us? The first law whispers a fundamental truth about human nature: never outshine the master. You observe this principle in action whenever you watch someone carefully modulate their brilliance in the presence of their superior. There's a delicate art to this deference, like a dancer who knows precisely when to step forward and when to fade into the background. The law suggests that threatening someone's sense of importance, even unintentionally, can transform allies into enemies. Consider the employee whose innovative ideas consistently overshadow their manager's contributions, or the student whose insights make their teacher feel inadequate. The tragic irony is that genuine talent and enthusiasm can become liabilities if not carefully managed. This law illuminates a deeper psychological reality: that human beings desperately need to feel significant, and that perceived threats to this significance can trigger surprisingly intense defensive reactions. You begin to see how this plays out in modern contexts where merit alone doesn't guarantee success. Social media influencers understand this intuitively, carefully calibrating their content to inspire rather than intimidate their audiences. The most successful collaborators have learned to make others feel elevated by their presence rather than diminished by it. Another principle that resonates through the ages is the art of concealing your intentions. You might think of this as the difference between playing poker with your cards face up versus face down. When your true goals remain hidden, you maintain the element of surprise and prevent others from organizing opposition against you. This isn't necessarily about deception, but about strategic timing and selective revelation. The entrepreneur who keeps their revolutionary business plan confidential until the right moment, or the negotiator who doesn't reveal their walkaway price too early, understands this principle instinctively. Yet this law raises profound questions about authenticity and trust in our increasingly transparent world. Social media encourages constant sharing, and corporate culture often emphasizes openness and collaboration. How do you balance strategic discretion with genuine connection? Perhaps the answer lies in understanding that concealing intentions doesn't mean concealing your character, but rather protecting your vulnerabilities until you're in a position of strength. The parent who doesn't share their financial worries with young children, or the leader who maintains confidence publicly while privately working through doubts, demonstrates this nuanced application. The law of dependency reveals another uncomfortable truth about human relationships: that being indispensable can be a form of security. When others rely on your unique skills, knowledge, or resources, you create a web of mutual interest that protects your position. The IT specialist who becomes the only person who truly understands the company's critical systems, or the friend who consistently provides emotional support during crises, demonstrates how dependency can flow both ways. But this principle walks a fine line between mutual benefit and manipulation. In our interconnected world, this law takes on new dimensions. The platforms that host our digital lives have made billions of users dependent on their services, while we've become dependent on the convenience and connection they provide. You begin to wonder, are we creating healthy interdependencies that benefit everyone, or are we falling into patterns of exploitation? The most ethical application of this law might involve developing skills and relationships that create genuine value for others while establishing your own stability and influence. Perhaps the most psychologically complex law involves the complete elimination of enemies. At first glance, this seems to advocate for ruthless destruction, but deeper examination reveals a principle about the incomplete resolution of conflicts. When you leave adversaries wounded but not defeated, you create conditions for prolonged warfare. The former colleague who feels partially undermined may spend years plotting revenge, while the competitor you weaken but don't eliminate may return stronger and more focused. This law forces you to confront an essential question about conflict resolution. Is it more humane to end disputes decisively or to accept ongoing tension? In personal relationships, this might translate to having difficult conversations that fully address underlying issues rather than papering over them with temporary compromises. In professional contexts, it might mean choosing between coexistence and clear resolution when conflicts arise. The law suggests that half measures often create more suffering than decisive action. Modern applications of this principle appear in business acquisitions, where companies choose between competing with rivals or acquiring them entirely. It echoes in personal relationships, where you must sometimes choose between cutting toxic connections completely or accepting ongoing dysfunction. The wisdom lies not in universal aggression, but in recognizing when situations require complete resolution rather than partial measures. The final law speaks to the power of formlessness, of remaining as adaptable as water flowing around obstacles. In our rapidly changing world, this principle feels especially relevant. The institutions and strategies that seemed permanent just decades ago have been transformed by technology, globalization, and shifting social values. You witness this in careers that no longer follow linear progressions, in relationships that defy traditional categories, in movements that organize without centralized leadership. This formlessness requires a kind of psychological flexibility that many find uncomfortable. It means holding your identity lightly enough to evolve when circumstances demand it, while maintaining core principles that provide direction. The successful entrepreneur who pivots their business model based on market feedback, or the individual who reinvents their career multiple times throughout their lifetime, demonstrates this adaptive capacity. Yet you must ask yourself, how do you remain true to your essential self while embracing necessary change? These laws collectively illuminate a central tension in human affairs, the gap between how we wish the world worked and how it actually operates. They suggest that power follows patterns that can be studied, understood, and navigated with greater skill. Most importantly, they raise questions about how you choose to engage with these realities. The key insight that emerges from examining these principles is that awareness itself provides a form of protection. When you understand the games being played around you, you can choose more consciously how to participate or resist. You can recognize manipulation while deciding whether to counter it, join it, or transcend it entirely. Perhaps the greatest power lies not in perfect execution of these laws, but in the wisdom to know when to apply them and when to choose a different path altogether. As you settle into quiet contemplation of these ancient patterns of influence, consider this lingering question. If understanding power's mechanisms is itself a form of power, how will you choose to use this knowledge in a world that desperately needs both effectiveness and compassion? The answer whispers itself not through any manual of strategy, but through the quiet choices you make each day between manipulation and service, between self-interest and genuine care for others. In the end, the most profound power may be the ability to recognize these dynamics while choosing to elevate everyone around you. creating influence that flows not from dominance, but from the generous sharing of wisdom and strength.